Tell me if this sounds familiar. You're at a restaurant enjoying your dinner and you look across the room and you see a family. The parents are sitting there talking to one another, but their kids are eerily quiet. They're almost in this sort of trance as they sink deeper and deeper into an iPad. A bunch of young parents I know are now making a big effort to avoid exactly that kind of a scene. After years of warning about social media and screen time, there's a backlash among many millennial parents to the thought of raising what some people would call an iPad kid. But it's not a luxury all parents can afford. Ditching screens is more of an option for parents who have time and resources to monitor their kids. What's odd about this is that I can still remember a time when we all wanted to give our kids access to more and better technology. So, are screen-free kids becoming a status symbol? And is this a new digital class divide? I recently spoke with the writer Róisín Lanigan, who's written a piece about why this complete 180 happened, and how this vision of a tech-free childhood also raises some thornier questions about time, money, and who can actually afford to unplug their kids from this digital world. Róisín, I want you to just put us in the context of where we are in kids and tech and income, because I think it was not that long ago that we worried that children from poorer backgrounds would be at a digital disadvantage because they wouldn't have access to the latest tech, the latest phones. And now I feel like we're worrying actually that something else could be happening, that there is a digital divide, but that it's wealthier kids who are being kept away from the latest iPhones, the latest tech, the latest iPad. So what is happening?
I think you're right. I think that so I'm in my 30s, and a lot of people around me are just beginning to have children. All the children that my cohort are having are still quite young. But I can remember a time when I was growing up when your luxury and your privilege was measured by the technological goods that you had. So you wanted the pink Motorola Razr, you wanted an iPod, and these were things that it was cool to have. But now, post COVID, as people are having kids post COVID, there's a real reversal of that. So I'm seeing wealthier parents making decisions where they have no screens in their home. Maybe their children don't even watch TV. Everything is geared towards analog sensory play. And there's a real fear of technology, and that can be at one end, like not even knowing how to turn an iPad on when you're 4, never mind having one in a restaurant. But at the other end, trying to protect your kids through minimizing their presence on your social media, so putting emojis over their face and things like that. And I think part of it comes from safety concerns. The internet has changed massively since I was younger and wanted access to this technology. But part of it is an expression of luxury too.
So it's
Because
almost like it's a kind of new status symbol. Having tech-free kids is the kind of sign of affluence.
Exactly, because I think that you have to break down, like, what does it mean to have a tech-free child? Because sometimes your kids are screaming and your house is really noisy, or you're at work, or you don't have childcare that can be quite expensive, and so putting a child in front of a TV or in front of an iPad is what you need at that moment. If you say that your child is going to be completely offline, you're communicating to the people around you that you have the means to patrol that you're maybe not working full time and that you're at home quite a lot, that you have a lot of access to your children. Because I think that the new expression of luxury is basically time. You have the time to work out, you have the time to
Mm.
parent, you have the time to do everything else. So you're saying that, like, I know what my child is doing at every moment of every day. And I think that one of the reasons why I started thinking about this was that I read this interview with Keira Knightley, where she was talking about her children a little bit older than the children that are around me. They're maybe like 12, 13. And she was given this interview where she said that she teamed up with other mums at the school, and they'd all decided to block social media for their children, and it was the best thing to do, which was presented as a really progressive and nice thing. And I think it is, but obviously Keira Knightley has the time to do that, or the staff that she employs have the time to do that. Normal parents don't.
What does this do to, and we've seen an explosion in income inequality, tons of stories about that here in the US, about that in Europe as well. What does this do to the kind of general class income divide between haves and have-nots?
I think it becomes, as you say yourself, I think it becomes a status symbol. I'm already seeing it as a status symbol for adults, where you'll have adults that say like, "Oh, I don't go on social media, I don't watch TV, I don't go on the internet, I have no interest in it," which is presumably very good because you're saying like, "Oh, well, I this is a fad and I don't engage with it." But when
I'm
you
a purist who reads long
exactly
novels and does knitting.
I understand culture on a higher plane, basically, is what they're saying. But I think
I'm a
also like
much better person.
exactly. But I think on a more base level, like if you look at how people network, how people find job opportunities, how people engage with the world around them and find their news, like by opting out of that, you're saying, well, I don't need that. I already know what I need to know. I already know the people that I need to know. I don't need to engage in the online world.
But I guess what we don't know is what the outcomes are going to be for those kids that are kept off devices compared to those kids whose parents perhaps can't afford to police them so much because they're working 2 or even 3 jobs, and what their prospects are going to be if they spend their childhoods more with more screen time. Or do you
Yeah.
think we can? Do you think we can already start to see what the outcomes of this divide are going to be?
I think that there's definitely research being done into that, and there seems to be again a fearfulness that the children who are growing up completely online and reliant on these devices, that their attention span is going to be worse, that they're not going to be able to learn in the same way that a child who is playing outside would learn. But I'm a little bit skeptical of that because like we just don't know, and it's not really 1,000 miles away from when I was a child, and it was like, "Well, your child should be on the computer for 1 hour a day, and you don't know what's happening on there," because my parents didn't understand the internet the way I did, and I won't understand the internet in the same way that my children will. The internet for mums and generally, like, the mum sphere is so judgmental. I mean, sure, parenting in general, but particularly for
Interesting.
mums. I think that it also becomes a way of shaming other people. It sits alongside,
Oh my
like
God, as if we needed more of that. As if we needed more opportunities to make mothers feel bad about the way they're parenting.
exactly. It sits alongside, why aren't you breastfeeding? Why didn't you have a natural birth? Now it's like, oh, your child uses an iPad. Oh, well, my child plays with jelly on the floor in a paddling pool, so mine is better than yours. So I see it as more of a one-upmanship than anything else. I don't think it's going to have any real difference. Once they go to school and they meet a child in the playground who has an iPad, it's going to be all undone anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
So, is it not a route that you would choose to go down yourself?
I don't think so. I don't see myself as having children who are, like ballerina farmified and little aprons and know how to make bread, but don't know, what cocoa melon is. I don't have the time or the money to enforce that as I think a lot of normal people do.
So can I put the counter argument to you, which is obviously the Jonathan Haidt argument, the anxious generation. Lots of us have read the book. I've interviewed him on this show before. That children are suffering from the amount of time they spend online, and we do have data that suggests that poorer kids are spending about 30% more time online than wealthier kids. Are you suggesting that really actually there's no downside to the amount of time that kids are spending online, and that parents, however wealthy they are, don't need to be monitoring this?
No, I mean, I don't have like a utopian libertarian attitude to this. I know that there are very dangerous, dark things on the internet, and I know that, being addicted to the internet is quite serious. Like I'm being facetious about it, but it is not good to be on the internet 20 hours a day. I think that I would prefer a more structured, like a lot of the social media companies are bringing in checks and balances for younger users now, and governments are trying to bring it in. So in the UK, we have this discussion about this social media ban for under 16s. I think that those things, while not perfect, are preferable to individual parents using it as an expression of privilege, because then it
Interesting.
becomes a kind of like, as I said, like a one-upmanship. And I don't think it's about safety as much it is communicating something about yourself as a parent. But I think it definitely needs to be regulated. I just don't think that this is the way to do it.
So if you could wave a magic wand, you would like to see more regulation around this, or more outside forces deciding this, rather than leading it up to individual parents or individual cohorts of parents, classes or social strata of parents.
Yeah, I think that it's placing the responsibility on the parents, which parents have so much responsibility over raising their child in so many other ways that I don't think this should be solely their responsibility too. I think that tech companies and social media companies should be doing a lot more here. As should individual governments. Like as I said, I don't think that the under 16 ban is perfect because I don't have a lot of um faith in the UK government to enact any policies that are beneficial to young people. But I think it's a step in the right direction in that it's more blanket rather than, as I say, like solely up to the parents. And then just another thing that a parent has to feel bad about if they can't fulfill that in the way that they want.
Okay. Róisín Lanigan, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.